So again, thank you for coming. I just want to introduce Dr. Edward Bilski. He's the Vice President of Research and Scholarship at the University of New England, and I do research with him with chronic pain, and if it wasn't for him and these two lovely gentlemen, Ernie Merritt and John Schrader, then this event would not have happened. So thank you.
So welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out, and just first appreciate Lindsay for putting this together. It is absolutely amazing what our students do here at UNE, and if you haven't done anything like this in the past, this is a call to see if you want to volunteer, get more involved. I've been particularly interested in the work that our students are doing around advocacy, and also certainly pain education, and more broadly scholarship. So if you don't want the traditional, say, bench research type experience, there's lots of other opportunities for you guys to get involved. And Lindsay's an example of that. Sam Shepard's here. She's done a lot down on the Biddeford campus with the College of Arts and Sciences. So also thank you to Shelley and Chris, the IPEC team, for all their support for doing events like this. My background is in opioid pharmacology, and I've been an opioid pharmacologist over 20 years of my professional career. Started when I was an undergraduate research student in the late 1980s. And we were investigating the effects of naltrexone, which is an opioid antagonist, on alcohol intake in rats. And that ultimately led to clinical tests that developed it into a drug that's actually useful for treating alcoholism. At the same time, we were starting to look into the pain field and trying to find alternatives to morphine and drugs like morphine that would have fewer of the side effects, particularly around the addiction liability and the gastrointestinal transit issues, the constipating effects of opioids. So I've had that successful career. I've published lots. I've gotten grants and all that. But somewhere in the past 4 years or so, I kind of realized that I had spent my entire life devoted to this, but had not had any kind of a meaningful conversation with someone who has got chronic pain or someone who's been touched with substance abuse. So that started to change through interactions like people like Ernie and John, the Chronic Pain Support Group, and others in the community. It was definitely way out of my comfort zone to start to have conversations. I think, well, he's a professor, he gets up in front of a group of students. That should be an easy thing to accomplish. And I don't know, I didn't even observe my own mother's chronic pain. I was insensitive to that, and she shielded me from that from the 1980s to the, into the 2000s. So it is interesting how we can, maybe not consciously marginalize or stigmatize or ignore people with mental health and chronic pain and substance abuse disorders. So part of the work we're trying to do is to destigmatize these conditions so we can have conversations. The other thing is I've been doing a lot around K through 12 outreach and education and community and public education. So one of the more recent set of talks I've been giving is basically titled The Bumblebee and the Firefly. You're saying, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, the bumblebee, I start out by asking, how many of you have been stung by a bee? You gotta be honest. So roughly 80% in a room has had a bee sting. And if I was to ask one of you, who would like to say something about their bee sting? Their bee sting experience, their first bee sting, their worst bee sting experience? Do we have any volunteers? Preferably in the front row area. So here's a stigma, right? Getting up in front of people and putting something personal out there. And who cares about a bee sting? Who's going to marginalize you over that? But I bet you right now you can think about intimate details. I was about 4 years old. I was in these oleanders between this house of a cousin's, and little Eddie was there, and this bumblebee landed right here. And I looked at it, and I thought it was really cool looking, and it was pretty, and then it stung me. And I remember running to my mom. I remember the shirt that she had on. It was red and white striped, and crying and getting comfort. How is it that something that lasted only a brief couple seconds, the pain lasted maybe minutes? I remember the intimate details of that day and probably the other 4 bee stings I've had in my life. I can give you those details. It's about our limbic system, and we remember things that harm us or could harm us. But then I didn't want to be all like Debbie Downer and say, all these horrible stories that we recollect from our childhood. What are some things that we remember that made us feel good? So I asked this to a group of 7th graders, my daughter's class, and this one young lady volunteered. She was brave, and she said, well, I was walking through a forest with my dad. It was around dusk, And I came across this meadow, and we saw all these fireflies. And it was the first time I'd ever seen kind of a meadow lit up with fireflies, and I was just amazed by it. And it was really special for me and my dad. And you think about that lens of that seventh grader, that's pretty powerful, for that connection with her dad. And that was something that was highly memorable. And it's funny how things can get stirred up, our memories. If you're going home tonight and you've got a song on the radio that comes on, it's one of your favorite songs, it might bring you back again to some memory. Typically, something that was pleasurable, something that was impactful in your life. So that's our nervous system, and it is amazing. It's helping us survive by remembering and doing things over and over again that are good for us, presumably, and things that are bad or can hurt us, we avoid. And I could pay you $1 million and you will not forget that first bee sting. If you recall it now, you're going to keep it, into your old age. And the same thing with good memories. So this relates to the opioids. The opioids are in our brains right now. We have endogenous opioids in the receptors, and they are helping us with survival. You may argue that in today's society, they may be maladaptive in some respects. One, they encourage you to overeat. When it was feast and famine, that might have been a very important thing. But in today's society, we've got food everywhere, McDonald's or the free lunches that you get at these talks. And so these opioids might be actually harming us, but also they're important for bonding, social bonding. They're important for feeling good at certain times, natural rewards. And you think about it, when you inject something like heroin, what's going to outcompete? A finite, discrete, temporarily, just a few seconds of a blip of neurotransmitter, or mainlining heroin, getting it up into your brain very quickly, saturating all those receptors, lasting for hours. Those natural rewards no longer are important to you. So this is what we're up against in the case of addiction and substance misuse. We know we've got a problem here in Maine, and we've got a huge problem in the United States. And I would say this is not just a problem of substance misuse of opioids. It's alcohol, it's tobacco, it's marijuana, it's bath salts, it's amphetamines. And these things cycle. So right now, the heroin and before that, the prescription opioids were big problems. We also have a huge health problem with chronic pain. And now what's happened is that the two groups are pointing their fingers at each other and saying, it's you, that chronic pain patient, that ruined my son's life because of those opioids that were in your medicine cabinet that then got in the hands of my kid that got addicted and then overdosed on heroin. And you point your finger right back to me and saying, you didn't lock up your medicine cabinet, and you didn't see the warning signs of your son, and you're taking all these different drugs, including alcohol, to take care of these concerns. And it's your fault because I'm a chronic pain patient and I'm not getting the help and medications or other treatments that I might need. So I want to take a step back, and this is some of these forums. We're going to have more of the chronic pain perspective tonight. But instead of pointing fingers, let's talk rationally on the evidence on both sides of the argument. Let's bring people together to try to think about some things that are more rationally minded. And if there's gaps, gray areas where we don't have enough information, that's the role of research and scholarship, where we have to design and we have to get funding for pivotal studies that are going to help guide us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panel, all of whom I believe have significant chronic pain. And they're going to give you their perspectives of how it's like living with chronic pain, some who take opioids, some who do not, and how things may have changed in the last couple of years with this prescription opioid now shifting over to heroin, fentanyl, and this W18, which is infiltrating the United States. It's another analog kind of related to fentanyl that I'm going to get interviewed at 3 o'clock with the local news because of some concerns. So with that, I think Lindsay's going to kick us off. And afterwards, after about 10 minutes each of them, we're going to open it up to questions and answers, and I'll facilitate that. I'll bring the mics over, and please ask questions.
Thank you. So I have always had headaches since I was younger, and they did not start becoming full-blown migraines until I was in high school. And it wasn't that bad until college, I think. And so this isn't like the type of migraine where, it's kind of bright and I just need to lay down. It's I want to die, my head's going to fall off, I can't see anything, I can't stand up, I can't do anything, and you don't know how long it's going to last for. I think the longest one I have had was 22 days straight. And you know, I've gone to several different neurologists. I am on preventative medication. I take medication when I have a migraine. It doesn't always work. You know, there are certain triggers. Trying to find them out is really interesting. So seeing different doctors for different medical problems I've had, I have GERD, and so I have certain dietary restrictions. I'm also prone to being having hyperlipidemia, so there's certain dietary restrictions. Trying to find something that I can eat that won't give me a migraine or, you know, potentially a pancreatitis attack or cause my acid reflux to flare up is interesting. And so it's things like this that it makes it hard on the patient. You know, you feel like you're kind of on your own, you know, and I do have good doctors, but I think it would be beneficial if they would talk to each other. They all use an integrated system, so they can see, you know, all the list of medications I'm on, you know, previous medical history, but it seems like there is no communication between my primary care doctor, my neurologist, and I think that medical providers forget that the advice that they're giving their patients has to truly be lived out, and it has to be realistic, and they all have to work with each other, you know, for it to be a success. And I know, you know, being in pharmacy school, I mean, you guys all know it's a really rigorous program, and it's hard to have to put your life on hold knowing that you can't do all of the things that you want to do, you're supposed to do, you're expected to do, and you don't know when you're going to be able to do them. And then letting yourself down, letting people around you down. It's hard to make commitments when, you know, you don't know. You can say, yeah, I can do this, I can, you know, I'll meet you there, I'll do this, and guess what? Half an hour before you're supposed to leave, you have a migraine. You can't see out of your left eye. You can't drive. So it kind of isolates you in a way, not only experiencing the chronic pain yourself, but also I feel like you have this stigma around you that, you know, people will associate, oh, well, she can't do this because she'll probably get a migraine, or, you know, things like that. So from my perspective, I know that I have a really close relationship with my pharmacist. I tell him everything. I ask him, you know, what do you think about this? Do you think this could be a potential trigger, blah, blah, blah. And I think that including pharmacists would be a really great practice for delivering personal care to our patients and actually working, you know, with chronic pain patients, because pharmacists, as you guys know, are one of the most accessible healthcare providers. And I think that with these collaborative practices, pharmacists aren't necessarily being included like they should be. So I think that's all I've got to say.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, I'm Ernie Merritt. I facilitate the Southern Maine Chronic Pain Support Group. And we have a saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is an option. And that's my motto I have taken. I got hurt when I was 33. I'm 52 now. It's been a long road. As you can see, John has a cane. I have canes that I make. I keep my mind busy doing stuff like that. But it's like pain is inevitable. I wear a brace underneath here to stand up. So I usually don't get the door held for me like someone that has a cane or something. But I am the same in chronic pain as the rest. So there's definitely a stigma on something that you can see exposed. I went through 4 back surgeries. I've gone through the opioids each time. I stopped the last time cold turkey because I didn't want to sleep the rest of my life. And I ended up with this brace. It's been since 2001. I call it my diet brace. I can't eat that much when I have it on. In 2003, I met my wife that I'm married to now. She said there was something wrong. You fall asleep in the morning when you're drinking coffee. I'm tired all the time. Well, I had a sleep study and I have narcolepsy. I get to sleep in REM sleep in 5 minutes during the day. So someone with chronic pain, medications are one of the avenues that we use. I can't do that. Any pain med, I go to sleep. I take over-the-counter Advil and Tylenol. It's the only thing I can take. When I do have a flare-up, which I do because sometimes the brace doesn't fit right, or I still pull back muscles, I still have some muscles, I end up taking a light muscle relaxer. When I do, I'm sleeping 2 days. It's like I can't do that because I want the life I have now. So it's very hard to, like the opioids, there's no way I can go to an opioid. It's just not a life that I want, sleeping all the time. So I thought of some things that I can relate, but I mean, you guys are a lot younger than me. Huey Lewis in the news, I want a new drug. Well, that won't make me sleepy and this and that, that's me. And then the other thing I thought of, a person in chronic pain, is, I don't know if you've seen the movie Groundhog Day. That's us. When you get up in the morning, what's different? Am I gonna be better, or is there another thing going on in my body? But I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm John Schrader, and I worked in the shipyard, believe it or not, with Ernie. And back when I was young, he got disabled when he was 33. Well, back then, I was Karate Joe. I used to call Ernie a hypochondriac. And then I didn't see him for about 10 years, and then I fall down an elevator shaft, and I get all torn up, and I end up disabled. And I go looking for a chronic pain support group, and I find Ernie. And it's like, that was like an ostrich-sized crow I had to eat, because I could never relate to what he was going through. It was like, I don't see what's wrong with this guy. He's always got a problem. I mean, you could hit me with a 2x4 and I'd just shake it off. I can't shake it off anymore. So when I first became disabled, they're giving me, gabapentin, and they're giving me opiates, Vicodin. And even Ernie remembers, I was taking 8 or 9 of them a day because I was trying to get myself back to where I could keep doing everything I used to do without any pain. And it's been 8 years, and I'm still caught in that cycle of, like Ernie said, I want to be who I was, and I actually can't be. So I've had to whittle myself down to where I take, all right, I'm going to take 4 Vicodin a day. That's it. Because I don't want a bad stigma either. If I go to the doctors and say, hey, I need more Vicodin, well, now I'm drug seeking. I already feel miserable, so every day it can be a very hard thing to try to deal with. I've described it to people that everybody here has had the flu at least once. You know, when you're laying on the couch and you really wish you could die, you want to go to sleep, but you're aching so bad you can't sleep. There's no way. That's how I feel every day. That's how I feel right now. But after 8 years of it, all right, I know that I'm not going to fall down and die. I don't need to go to the hospital. It's not going to do me any good. If you could feel the way I feel right now, you excuse yourself and say, I need to go to the doctors. Something's wrong. I got bone cancer. I got something. But you don't. But then you get caught in a pharmacological loop to where if you keep going to different doctors, you end up with that worse stigma again. And all I ever wanted to be is just, I want to be who I was, and there's just no way around it. But of course, I'm a single guy, I've always lived alone, and I beat myself up pretty bad. And I'm too stupid to go to the doctors. Now it's gotten to the point where if I'm sick, if I have a sinus infection or something wrong, I don't even know if I've got it. It takes me months beyond when most people would say, I got to go to the doctors. I can't tell if I'm sick because I just always feel so bad. But what other medications are there that you can take for that? You know, I'd like to be able to go back in time and change things. I'd like to be able to go back to when me and Ernie were healthy working together and Say, hey, I understand what you're going through, but there is just, you can't go back. All you can do is keep moving forward. But even when you have chronic pain, that can also cause psychological problems too. I mean, I never had to go see a counselor or a psychiatrist, and now I have to. Because there's that part of me that doesn't want to accept what's happened. And I don't want to appear weak to people. You know, because now it's like, oh my God, someone's going to victimize me because they think I'm a cripple and I can't defend myself, and who's going to prey on me? Wouldn't be good for them to try it because I can still hurt people, but hurting people is actually quite easy. I can hurt anybody. Yeah, trying to heal someone, you realize that's an awful different situation. So I'm not really sure what else we can do on things like that except to have conversations with our doctors. But when you have 3 or 4 different doctors, you realize that they're not communicating with each other as much. They're just not. And you can't expect your doctor to, you know, everyone says, oh, I want more time with my doctor. Well, you hear him out in the hallway, he grabs your file, and 2 minutes later he comes in. They just don't have the time. So how can we give the doctors that kind of time? You know, they've got 8 minutes or whatever from when they walk in the door to go over something that I could ramble on for 2 hours about just how I got to where I am, and it still wouldn't be everything. So how do I make one doctor understand it when you don't have that kind of time with them? So that's why we have the chronic pain group, and we try to invite doctors, or even doing something like this, where this is definitely not my comfort zone to be talking to a bunch of people I don't know. But there has to be a way for you, the next generation coming up, to be able to do something about it and not see somebody as, look at me and say, well, there's just a junkie that just wants more medication. I really don't want more medication. I don't want the pain, but I've learned that I have to live with a certain amount of it, because either that or you walk around in a coma most of the time. You know, how much Vicodin can you take and still drive a car? Well, that's a good question. You know, I take 4 a day. I limit my own driving, but to me that's like taking an extra strength Tylenol. But if I don't take it, I know what it does to me. But I also have problems with food that are different than Ernie's. I have not eaten anything today, because I know that if I eat something, my body is going to shut down. I'm going to have to lay down. I can't just lay down wherever I'm sitting. I still have to drive home, so today is a sacrifice. Drink a bunch of coffee, take my pills, and not eat. So I had to watch all you guys eat. So that's not too good for me, but I'll survive it, because I know after 8 years, we've just learned what our bodies can do, what we can't do, and we've learned to live within that little section. I got to survive within this period. I have insomnia at night, and when I get up in the morning, I spend an hour sitting in a recliner shaking my head like, whoo, it's a severe brain fog. You know, my brain's trying to finish the dream I just had upstairs every time I close my eyes. Well, you can't just walk out the door and start doing something, because I'll fall down anyway. I don't walk so well. But hopefully when you guys have some questions, we can answer some more of those for you. Is that good?
So we're going to open this up, and from my own observations, I know these guys quite well, but looking at them, do they look like they have a chronic disease? No, they look like normal human beings, right? They come in all shapes and sizes, ages, and so pain does impact everybody at some point in their life. And we think we understand from that bee sting or that broken arm that we can extrapolate those perspectives into what they live through every day. And I think one of the most telling things, I don't know if it was Ernie or maybe Rob Foley, said, we don't want to be referred to as difficult patients. We want to be referred to as people who have challenging or difficult diseases, just like someone with diabetes or someone with cardiovascular disease. So that's very important. They've shared some intimate details in those brief remarks, and I think they're willing to share some more. So we're going to open up. Raise your hand if you've got a question, and if not, I'll randomly call on you guys. So Who's going to be the guinea pig? I'll bring the microphone over.
Hi, I'm Adrienne from Occupational Therapy. My question is, you mentioned that there are some activities that are sort of triggering for your migraines. Are there activities that you guys do daily that sort of help your pain that you found?
I'll start. So a passive activity, I have a special pillow for my neck because I have a pinched nerve in my neck, and I know that if I sleep, if my neck isn't supported, I will easily get a migraine. So I have that. I have certain like muscle kind of building like back exercises and neck exercises. And I know that just from a stress point of view, which can be a trigger for migraines for me, working out a couple times a week definitely helps. And when I can, I go to a chiropractor to have my back adjusted because that alleviates pressure from my head. So.
I have a big thing that goes in the refrigerator. Goes on your back. It's ice, but it's a chemical in it. When it starts warming up, it gets softer. When it first starts, it gets hard, and I lay on ice for different parts of the day, because when I don't have my brace on, I'm either holding on to something or laying in my recliner. And I do stretch, but a couple weeks ago I stretched and pulled a back muscle. I stretched too far, and I didn't think it was that far until I got in bed and muscle spasms started. So it's a learning experience every time. I'm still looking for stuff that would help me without taking medications because I don't want to sleep. I mean, I get up and I'm like John. I'm not shaking. I just want that cup of coffee to get going.
I've always been the kind of person that liked to go out for a walk, even after being all day on my feet, get home from work and go for a walk. Well, I still like to do that. Of course, you see I use a cane, because if I don't use a cane, it looks like I've drank a 12-pack, which means the cops will pull you over, and they are not going to be very nice to you when they do it. So there's kind of a little thing there. And I don't want to stop walking because I have a fear that if I stop moving, I won't be able to move. I still like to, once a week, I try to catch up with my friends because I'm still the head black belt. So they still like to have me, come to the class. I still have a good eye. I can point things out. But I want to keep doing stuff. The problem is when I keep doing those things, I usually feel really bad the next day. So it's the same thing as everything else. I have to give something up. I have to give up tomorrow or a little bit of today to do something right now. You just have to make that choice, and it's not something that you want to do. Me and Ernie do that all the time. You might not want to do something, but you got to give something up. Like yesterday wasn't too much, and today is it? Yeah, there was a girl in one of the magazines, Pain Pathways, that described everything as a bunch of spoons. She was with a friend that didn't understand chronic pain, and the friend's like, I don't understand what your problem is. And she goes, well, here. She grabbed a dozen spoons and gave them to her and said, these are what you have for energy for the day. When they run out, you're done. She goes, all right, I'll take your challenge. So she handed her the spoons. She took them, and she's like, okay. And she took 2 of them away. She goes, what'd you do that for? She goes, you got up and came out. You left the house. That cost you 2 spoons. When you get done eating, it's going to cost you another one. When you walk to your car and go for another walk, it's going to cost you another one. So after about 4 hours, she only had like 3 spoons left. She's guarding them. She didn't want to do anything because she was afraid that she'd run out. Because when you run out, you go home and you lay down. And that's the part that people don't see about me is I always try to put on my strongest face because I don't want to become that victim. So see me, I wear a leather vest, I wear dark sunglasses, and I got a pissed off look on my face like I'll tear you apart if you get in my way. I'd rather have people be afraid of me than to let them really know how bad I really feel. Because it can feel really bad sometimes. And what do? But psychologically, you have to have things that are good for you, like my friends from karate. When they're with me. They make me remember who I was, even though I can't quite be that person. But there is definitely a psychological thing, and Ernie is married, so he has a little bit of a support group that lives with him. I lived by myself. So I used to deal with 1,000 people a day in the shipyard. Now I'm alone. So getting out of the house and going for a walk or going to karate or even coming here, this is a special treat for me. Because other than that, everybody likes my house. I've done a lot of work on my house. Geez, you got a beautiful house. No, that's a prison. It's a life sentence, and I'm stuck there. You know, it's like a junkyard dog on a chain. I can run so far, and that's it. I get choked out. How much can you do with it? So you have to have support groups, and you have to have some kind of a system to help you. But you have to have activities. Ernie likes to make canes, and you know, I still like to go teach people how to hurt people. It's kind of fun.
Ernie, can you comment on the woodworking and that role that it has in terms of therapy? I think that connects in with the occupational therapy field as well.
Working with what?
Woodworking and making the canes and what you do with the canes.
Yeah. With narcolepsy, it's kind of like I call it a double-edged sword. With my chronic pain in my back, I think I got that, you know, manageable. And then this narcolepsy thing, it's like, you know, I take the highest dose Ritalin I can. Well, I don't know if you know what Ritalin does. I can't gain weight. This is the lowest I've been. I was 10 pounds heavier in high school. I can't eat enough.
I weigh more than you. I'm about 5 inches short.
Well, you know, when we go out to eat and my wife has a little more on her plate than mine, people are looking at me, what am I, you know, not saving it for later. So I like to keep my mind busy, but I have to do something. I have to keep my hands busy too. I can't read that long, or I can't watch TV that long. I'll go to sleep. I have carpal tunnel surgery, arthritis in the fingers now and stuff, so I really got to mix and match. I have a lathe. I make canes. I started the oldest person cane award in my city, Saco. My wife says I have a little addiction. I got 18 canes made at home. I don't sell any. I give them all away. She said, you better start giving them away. I made a rotisserie. It's 8 holes. Well, that got filled a little while ago. She said, I can't make another one, so I got to do something. But it keeps my mind busy. It doesn't spend that much money. I don't hurt myself doing it because it's a little easier work than a lot of stuff. So I think it's very important if you can get your mind off the pain. With John getting out of his house, he has to get out of his house. I understand that. You know, and you know, we used to call him Karate Kid at work. And you know, I understand that he can't give that up. It's part of him.
You have some more questions?
Hi, my name is Gurkishan Chadha. I'm with the College of Pharmacy. So, you know, I want to start with thanking you. You know, every day people who think they are normal, they start their day maybe with a burnt toast, and that agitates us. Burnt toast, how could that happen to me? And then you come across people that they have these matters, and you talk about chronic pain, and then you realize how trivial those things were, right? So I know it takes a lot, and thank you again for coming up and sharing that with us. And we have a lot of pharmacists here, and I believe all of us, when we go to the world tomorrow, we appreciate these concerns. You know, we take that 2 minutes, 10 minutes time extra and talk to that patient coming in. And I believe we are getting educated to that, and we should be able to work out with the system. The concern, however, is the administrative, the red tape that I'm sure you guys come across all the time. A recent example is our esteemed leader, governor, who was oblivious to the overdose of heroin, right? 232 deaths by overdosing. So there's, again, you've mentioned a lot of stigma involved in this, right? with the support group that you have and what resources that you have, how do you go about overcoming these barriers when people in the administration, people in the society, people in the health services, they associate you or other people from the chronic group as, hey, you know what, it's not even worth spending time treating them, giving them excess medication. How do you overcome them? How do you portray the image that this is beyond normal? How do you deal with that? How do you educate them? It's easy talking to pharmacists who once read about it, understand the pharmacology, and maybe appreciate it. But a normal day person, in the administrative, in the government, who have the power to sign those bills, how do you reach out to them?
We had Ann Goodridge from Shelley Pingree office come and talked about Social Security. Now in June, I think it's June 2nd, our nighttime meeting, we're having another representative from Shelley Pingree's office that deals with policies and procedures, and one of them is making the rules for opioids and stuff. So what I've done is look over the governor, because he can't help me, go into people that go into Washington, or some other locals that like the reps and stuff like that, that don't agree with the governor. So, you know how you say you can't fight City Hall? You look for somebody else in that same regiment, same level, a rep or a senator or something that has a different point of view, our point of view. And during the chronic pain support group, if something comes up where someone is really like almost an argument or something about opioid use or something, my job being a facilitator, and I've done this since Sue Gold started the group in '93 and I took over in 2008, is we change everything into a positive, because being negative about a situation like that doesn't get us any place. We have to find a way that helps us, because John knows it, I know it. If you get stressed, it's worse. I can't get out of bed. It's chronic pain. You gotta take care of yourself as best as you can. So I look for avenues like someone that's on our side.
And so kind of going back to that, pain is invisible. I think that people kind of, their idea of someone that has chronic pain, no offense guys, are a little older, you know? And so I think for me, it's difficult because I don't want to say, no, I'm in a lot of pain, like you don't see this, like I feel like I'm dying, because I don't really want to admit that. I don't want to, if people ask me how I'm doing, I don't want to say pretty much every day, like, oh, I have a migraine, my head kind of hurts, because that's depressing, and I don't really want to think about it. And, I think for me, I think being here at the university gives me an advantage that, I can do research, I can reach out to representatives and kind of advocate, and bringing awareness for the chronic pain group. I know a lot of people, at least in my class, when they ask what I'm doing, and I say, oh, I'm doing research with the chronic pain, they're like, oh, okay, cool. And so I think that doing things like this really, brings awareness to what we're trying to do. And I think that having compassion for people is one of my biggest motivators. So I'm an intern at a local pharmacy, and I know that I have more compassion for patients because I have gone through something that is painful. And I understand it's frustrating when you can't get a hold of your doctor and all of the burden is put on you to, basically scramble and try and figure out, okay, I need this prescription, I need this appointment, and there's no middleman. And I think that if, we continue to do outreach like this, that it's going to draw attention eventually.
Just wanted to add one more thing to that with what she was saying, is having to admit that you really feel that bad, you don't even want to do that. at some point. Me and Ernie were at a seminar, and there was one doctor came up, and it was a billboard about us. The doctor came up to me and he said, well, you take opiates, right? And I said, yeah, I take 4 Vicodin a day. He goes, get off of them. And I said, well, how would I go about that? He goes, just get off of them. Go home and just deal with the withdrawals from it. And I'm like, well, you're giving me the solution, but you ain't giving me any road to get to it. He was the only doctor that was there that had that kind of take on it, which was really kind of disturbing to us that was there. Sam was there with us too. And it really wasn't a fair opinion for him to give to me, because he is the one that made me feel like the victim or a villain that I already am, always wanting some pain medication.
So I'll add to this because, as a student and a faculty member, I never knew anything about advocacy until I started working with Sue Gold and then Ernie and the others in the pain group. And I think very importantly, we got our students involved very early. We knew there was a lot more students than there are faculty. We also got our staff members involved. At the local level, Sam Shepard, who's in the back there, is doing some really neat things around a particular Maine law that impacted someone who was desperate with chronic pain. I won't give you the intimate details, but they felt compelled enough to take this and at the local level to try to get some change in Augusta. I was down in Washington, D.C. About a month ago, ran into Mac and some pharmacy students. We have routinely brought down students of our own and also some faculty and community members to meet with our senators and representatives down in Washington. They and their staff are there, and that's their job. And I never knew how Washington, D.C. worked until you experience a few times, hopefully with some people that bring you through and kind of introduce you to it. But this is something that all of you can play. Your voices do matter, and they are counted. You need to be professional. You need to state your credentials if you're going to be talking about a particular topic with authority. You certainly are also welcome to opinions, hopefully backed up with some information. You got your facts straight. You got to realize that there are going to be differences of opinion on many of these social and even medical issues that were confronting us. But get involved. It's not that hard, and even if you're not interested in chronic pain or substance abuse, you've got something else you're passionate about, it's important to get your voices heard and work through groups, local groups like the Chronic Pain Support Group, national societies, professional societies. You're going to be doing that whether you're a pharmacist, an OT, a PT, a nurse. You're going to have professional societies. And then there's large-scale foundations and other advocacy groups, too, that you can get involved with. We work with the U.S. Pain Foundation, and we're going to be celebrating Pain Awareness Month in September. Again, a whole series of events that educates the public and our students, very importantly. So next question, Gail.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. I'd like you to give us some insight in, I just kind of, somewhat a brief story. My mother was in a lot of pain and nobody was listening to her till the physical therapist actually listened to her, and it was overnight till they were the ones that found there was a tight muscle. So my question is, give us some guidance as healthcare professionals. When you're talking to people, what should we be listening for? Sometimes we don't really listen well. So what are the pleas for help that you could help the physical therapist, the pharmacist, everyone else in this room? When they're listening, when they hear things, what should pop up in their mind that they could do to help you?
Thank you. Well, I think that things like this is a good experience to draw from, that, as we have said, pain comes in many different shapes, sizes, and it's invisible and it's personal. I think that you can't expect one drug, one regimen, one therapy to work for everyone. And I think that there has to be a balance. You have to really look at the person's life, what makes them that person. Because when you experience chronic pain, it strips that away from you, that you feel torn between things that you need to do versus things that you want to do versus who you're going to be versus who you were. And I think that, looking at a holistic approach, things that make them happy or give them a positive, sense about themselves is important. And I think that you, and myself as a medical provider, need to be aware of realistically what they can and cannot do, and understand that, you know, they may not be exactly where the doctor or the medical provider wants them to be, but any improvement is improvement. So.
Trying to think, I think we started in January. Dr. Nananda Cole and the Chronic Pain Support Group and a handful of other professionals are working from a grant to get better communication from the primary care and the patient. And that's what we're doing. And we've had some, little seminar things with questionnaires and stuff. And one of them was, and what we feel as a patient is, I've told the doctor something, and I don't know if they're really listening. I think if there was some keywords that doctor could relay back to me to reassure that he's listening to me, that would give me confidence, the medical profession. Recently, a couple weeks ago, I went to the doctor, and there's always a stand-in because my primary wasn't there. And of course, you know, you're allergic. It's right on the front cover of the sheets, and she was going to give me penicillin. Or no, there was another one, and it's like, no, I'm allergic to that. It's like, please read my chart. I mean, a little something like that. Give me assurance that they're doing their job.
I almost think the doctor needs to realize that if you're a chronic pain patient, say, for 10 years, we've told our story so many times that we almost get tired of repeating it. You know, I think all of you have had a relative that you go, how are you doing today? And they go off on a 45-minute tirade about how bad they feel. I don't even want to listen to myself complain anymore. You know, I don't want to look at the guy in the mirror because he's got the same story. Just don't want to hear it. So when you get to the doctors, you're trying to think, what can I say in that short period of time to emphasize how bad I feel? It always ends up being he's asking questions, and I'm kind of, you know, how's your walking? Well, it's okay. I can walk. You know, they don't, but they're not looking back at 10 years ago I could barely walk, and now I'm walking better, but no one even has a real reason why I walk the way that I walk. But then you start dealing with Social Security, which we've had to deal with, and Ann Goodrich's office was really good with that for us. People that actually wanted to hear it. She wanted to hear it. But when I was dealing with Social Security, I get something in the mail saying, your condition has improved and you can go back to work. And I'm like, on what planet? I couldn't even be a Walmart greeter. I walk in the door and they want to get me an electric cart. I'm just a stubborn jackass, and I won't take an electric cart because I don't want to end up in a wheelchair, so I keep fighting it. But you're always dealing with the unknown, faceless entity of Social Security, and then, like Ernie said, once you start adding stress to a problem like mine, well, everything starts getting worse, because now I'm not sleeping. I already don't sleep good. So you add stress to it. Oh, you're going to lose your house. You're going to lose your medication. You're going to lose everything. And it's somebody that I've never met and that has never met me. That's half of the problem, which was I was talking to Ann Goodrich's office. It's like, do these people ever want to see me? I mean, most doctors, when they see me, go, you've been walking like that for 8 years? Yep. Do you fall down? Yep. But there's nobody that's controlling the situation behind that curtain that you ever get to see, and they don't ever want to see you, because then you become a person. So my doctors are trying to convey to Social Security, and it gets lost in there, and my doctors say they're talking to each other, but they're really not, because I keep getting asked the same question, and it's a surprise to them every time I answer it. They've just got too many patients to deal with. So they grab your file and they read it for a minute and come in the door, and they're trying to get a refresher. They just don't, I don't think they have the time to dig into a problem like ours or Ernie's. You know, well, we can give you this medication. Yeah, it'll knock him out for 3 days. I took pills before this started. If Ernie took that, he'd be drooling right now. To me, it's nothing. It's what I take every day because we're disabled, but our disability is totally different. I feel like I got run over by a bus and I survived. I'm still walking. So we just deal with it. And you get you do get discouraged talking to your doctor about it because it just seems like you're just whining. You know, oh, you're a whiner and here's some pills and see me in 6 months or a year.
I guess I want to follow up on that. You know, just again, if we talk about personal experiences, having a mother who went to a bout of chronic pain, and nobody would listen to her. She kept saying, the front of my leg hurts, the front of my leg. Not a single physician would even feel her leg, till the physical therapist listened to her and said, where does it hurt? And sat down with her and found out that this muscle was so tight, there was no reason why it wasn't hurting. It was finally somebody that listened to what the patient was saying and listened rather than, and I think that's so critical as healthcare professionals. We really have to take the time to listen. And after that, you know, it was like night and day.
It's not always a doctor.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always, you know, you go to a specialist and you think that's where you're going to get your answers. You know, I'm lucky I have Aetna for Medicare. Every year they send a nurse practitioner to my house. I would just assume I've only met the woman once. I'd just assume talk to her. I mentioned the problem I have with food and she goes, well, that's easy. She goes, when you eat, it takes a lot of energy to digest food. My body doesn't want to have to digest the food. You know, it takes so much out of me, it knocks me down. Well, how come a nurse practitioner can understand that? And the neurologist at Togus just looked at me like, you got something wrong with you. I really understand that. I was trying to explain to the doctors because when the way my injuries happened, I got so many injuries and I needed a lot of surgeries in a row. But I kept going to work. I'm a single guy. I'm not going to take a day off from work. If I'm sick, I go to work. I'll be sick if I stay home. I might as well go to work. That was my philosophy. It didn't matter how much you hurt me, I'll keep going. Well, eventually when I lifted something up, I spun some vertebrae in my thoracic and in my neck. That still didn't stop me. Twisted my arm up like this. It took months for me to get it to straighten back out. Nerve pain running down. The center of my back felt like someone hit me with a sledgehammer. None of that seemed to matter to the doctor when I was trying to explain it to him. The chiropractor was adjusting it. It felt like she was shoving a knife through my spine. And I'm like, something's not right here, woman. And she's like, you'll be fine. We'll send you to physical therapy. The physical therapist was only doing what the chiropractor gave for instructions. So he laid me down on a foam roll and threw a weight across my shoulders. That was fine. And then he starts pulling on my neck to straighten me out and relieve some of the pressure. Great. He pulls the weights off. I sit up. He goes, come on over here. I jumped off the table and crab walked right into a wall. It's a good thing there was a chair there because I would have just hit the floor. He did that 2 or 3 times and he finally put his hands up. He goes, dude, I'm not touching you ever again. You need to go back upstairs. So it was odd. It was a physical therapist that finally drew a line in the sand and said, you know what, I'm not going to cross that line no more. You need to see somebody that isn't me. So it's odd. The doctor wasn't listening to the fact that I was saying, look, I feel like I went 50 rounds with Mike Tyson bare-knuckled here. Something's not right. I shouldn't be in constant pain all the time. Because the pain is invisible. Walking like a crab, you know, if I got up and walked and fell off the stage, you'd go, yeah, he's either drunk or there's something wrong with him. So it took a physical problem of seeing it for them to draw the right conclusion. Like when I first started, I wouldn't walk with a cane because that would be giving up. I'm not going to do that. It was when I finally got stopped by a cop and he was very rude to me because when you're drunk, they don't care about you. You're just a drunk walking down the street. When he realized I wasn't slurring my speech, he changed his tune. So that it's kind of the same thing. The cop had a perception. He saw someone staggering, he's drunk. Because he didn't see that there was something else wrong there. So it's all a matter of perception of how your doctors might see it. You know, at least he was nice to me afterwards. But it can be a little bit of a problem.
We hear this over and over and over again. And so this is something we can do as a university, to put you in front of real people with these challenges and their experiences, and hopefully that makes an impact on you. Ernie also mentioned the research he's involved with. So isn't that pretty cool? We've got uni faculty and students and also people in the community part of research grants. And that particular research grant is focused on what's called shared decision making. Inevitably, the decisions that are made a lot of times are passed on either to the healthcare professional, you're the expert, you tell me what to do, or the healthcare professional doesn't bother to ask or care the perspective of the person in front of them and what their goals might be, or how they got there and where they might want to lead. And each person that presents themselves has different values and different goals and different stories that have to be incorporated. So you need to foster that atmosphere to have a shared decision. That typically is a better course than having one person or the other make the decision. Next question. Who would like to go?
Hi, my name is Whitney and I'm from pharmacy, and I've been doing a lot of research this year surrounding the stigma of mental health, and in particular addressing the stigma held by pharmacy students towards people with mental illness. And my question for you guys is, have you noticed a change at all in the stigma that you've seen either from your peers or from providers? I know that having like the opiate epidemic and everything that's in the public eye has kind of raised almost like an awareness towards it, but I was curious if you've seen any changes at all.
So I'll start. Just tell you my life story. So I take Concerta. I have had ADHD since I was in 5th grade. And so when I started going to neurologists for my migraines, they tried telling me, oh, well, you shouldn't be taking that. You were diagnosed in 5th grade. You don't have ADHD anymore. Okay. And, the stimulant, there's this big push to get off any sort of stimulant, which I understand from their perspective. They're trying to do what's best. But when I went to my most recent neurologist, he didn't mention anything about that. He didn't mention anything about my birth control and how, the estrogen could be affecting my migraines. And I think there's some kind of leftover perception of, basically how people are supposed to operate, that being honest about your mental state, or things that you do that may not necessarily be best for you or acceptable, like alternative therapies, like medicinal marijuana, things like that. I think there is kind of that old school mentality that that's not an acceptable form of treatment. However, I kind of do see this emerging kind of younger generation like us that I feel like we are more accepting. I feel like we can be more open, and I think that we're starting to realize that there is a person, it's not just a patient. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm going mental. I'm tired so much all the time. Medication-wise, I just bring it to memory when my wife says she had to take a pill. She goes, I don't want to take a pill the rest of my life. And I go, welcome to the club. So I get a lot of medication, well, not a lot of medications, but some medications from the VA. And I still keep my regular pharmacist in my town because I have good communication through her. I mean, there's probably 5 different ones, but I know them all. Just going there through the years. And I always tell them what else I'm on, because it doesn't seem like the VA is connected to the regular health care. They definitely don't talk to each other. So I always tell her what I'm on, and is it going to be a side effect or anything? And I've tried different medications for my narcolepsy, and nothing else works. There's so many different side effects, and that's another thing I rely on my pharmacist. I mean, to me, they're wicked smart. I mean, so I'm glad that, you know, you have a pharmacist school.
I'm kind of like Ernie. I go to the VA and I get a lot of my medications there, but I keep one that I had a long time ago, which was a blood pressure medication, through my first primary care physician. And I want to keep him in the loop because I get along the best with him, and it's because I've known the man for 12 or 13 years. He remembers me as being the tough guy that, you know, would come in once a year maybe. So he was around when all of this happened, so he knows the whole story. So when I go in there, I don't feel like I'm begging to a new doctor and going, geez, you know, I need some extra Vicodin, or I need something stronger than Vicodin to take care of it, because he actually would probably give me anything I asked for, but I would not want to do that. That's kind of my own personal preference. I wouldn't want to, because, you know, those doctors are always getting in trouble. You know, he doesn't know if he's giving me 30 Vicodin a month if I'm selling half of them. You know, even though I'm passing the piss tests that they give you and this and that, your doctor has to trust you. And I'm lucky that the VA doctor that I started seeing a couple of years ago, he seems pretty nice. He's happy with my blood tests, and they're coming out exactly the way they should. And it's because I'm not asking for more or anything. And every time I see him, I'm always saying, you know, if there's something other than Vicodin I can take, I'm willing to try it, you know, but you can't get medical marijuana through the VA because it's still federally illegal. With my primary before that is normal. He wanted to give it to me, but I really didn't want to mess with that. I smoked enough pot when I was younger. Who knows what that did? You know, that could be half the reason why I'm sitting here. We just don't know. You know, I experimented quite young. It was a good time. Not anymore. But any other medications, I mean, I take the maximum dosage of gabapentin for my body weight that I can take. And I always thought, well, maybe this isn't even doing me any good, until I tried not taking it once and realized that I was laying in bed kind of rocking back and forth. I'm like, what the hell could it really be helping me that much? Because when you take it and you think that people like us we have a low tolerance for pain. Give us a little bit of pain and oh, it's killing us. Actually, I think it's quite the opposite. I think I have a pretty high tolerance for pain. I could smash my finger, yeah, it'll hurt, but I can shrug that off because it's an acute pain that's going to go away. I've been dealing with feeling horrible for so long that it just takes an awful lot to make us really realize that, hey, you know, that really should hurt. You know, why is your hand all swollen? I don't know, I don't even remember doing it now. Everything else hurts more. Pharmacists are definitely the people to talk to when I always keep, that's why I go to that regular doctor too, so that I can still deal with the pharmacist that, even at Walmart, he's very good, always takes the time to check for interactions and stuff too.
So you asked the question about the recent opioid crisis and how that's impacted the stigma from maybe the perspective of the person with a substance misuse issue versus those of who have chronic pain. I think on the say misuse addiction side, if there's anything good that has come out of this, is that the discussion is taking place across communities. If you read the paper, you look at the news channels, this is front and center pretty much every week. That has also seen a paradigm shift in police, law enforcement, DEA, FBI. Some of these people are on the front lines responding to these overdoses. And it has now allowed us to say, maybe we have multiple roles to play, whatever group we're part of. Police, I think, are much more open to trying to find treatment options for these individuals versus just throwing them into jail and considering the problem solved. What I worry about is the backlash on the chronic pain field. We had made some significant strides in raising pain awareness, calling it a disease, and then starting to try to have multimodality treatments. In some patients, in some conditions, opioids are appropriate and they will get benefit. But like I think one of our panelists said, we don't have magic bullets, right? What works for you is not necessarily going to work for me or for him. And certainly combining therapies and doing some trial and error too. I think you've expressed that sometimes this feels like a pharmacology experiment or a health professional experiment or a life experiment, as you are given lots of advice from different people and trying to incorporate these things into your daily routines. What works, what does cost or does not cost a lot of money, what introduces potential for harm or does not, and weighing all those factors. And then you've got the whole perception and stigmas associated with this, which certainly does not help, and I think it increases your stress. Do you guys want to comment on any of those remarks or take another question?
I know the chronic pain support group that I facilitate, we are sponsored by the American Chronic Pain Association, ACPA, and Penny Coward, the president, is on all kinds of different committees in Washington, and one of them is the policy making for the opioids. She's the patient side of it. So I called her a few weeks ago when we talked before the last opioid panel on her take on opioids, because I'm kind of representing the ACPA, and she said, if you say it like this, you'll be out of the media and you'll be, kind of put it back towards the patient or the person in chronic pain. It is a choice, and the choice should be between the physician and the patient at that time. It's like during their visit, if that's the choice they take, it's between them, not all the media and stuff. And I realized, and I thought about that, and it's true. It's, who else is going to make the decision for me? I'm not going to rely on anybody except for a doctor I know. And also, I feel the opioid epidemic is, if someone gets arrested or into jail because of opioid use or whatever, I feel the healthcare failed. So in the meantime, we have to do something with these new students, hopefully, and get that connection back. I mean, I was telling Lindsay, I said, I think there's a healthcare person missing. It's like a coordinator. I mean, what happens if you're elderly and you can't get to your appointment? I mean, the transportation challenge and stuff. Who do you call? The doctor doesn't care. You can't make that appointment. We make another one. Or one of the members in the group, an older lady, I think she's 80, challenged in getting a ride. She saw this doctor a year or 2 years ago, wanted to see the same doctor. They said, no, you got to have a pulmonary test first, and then you'll see this other nurse practitioner, not your doctor. Who do you call if you don't like that decision? You're in charge of your own health care. You got to be proactive. Who do you call? I think there should be another person that you can contact, some coordinator that would help you.
And you guys are probably going to end up in a situation where you're going to have to be looking at one of your patients about chronic pain, and you're going to have to try to make the decision, is this guy in pain or this woman in pain, or are they scamming me to get medication and your license could be the thing being jeopardized? And it agitates me when I know that people do that, because they're making my life hell. I don't sell my medication, I take it. And I'm open with my doctor. I told him, if you want to call me up at midnight and tell me to be in first thing in the morning for a pill count, all you got to do is do it. I'll make sure I'm there, because I know I can't live without what I have to take. But I would not want, it's almost like I would not want to be in their shoes, because you can see the way they're looking at you, like they're trying to read you. And some people are just there for the scam, and that hurts everybody. But because there is an addiction issue. One of my karate students, Greg, he's 50. I met his son, he's 35 years old. I saw him on a Sunday night, and then I find out on Tuesday that he's dead, and it was a heroin overdose. And I'm like, this is Maine. I really didn't even know that stuff was happening, and I didn't even know how to talk to my friend. I mean, I've known this guy for 8 years. I've met his son a bunch of times. I just seen the guy. And I would have never thought that he was into that, young, healthy man. And it's like, wow, that really, it almost hit home for me, because that's someone close to me that I saw it happen to. And that was within this last year. And he's not handling it too well either. Like I said, pharmacy-wise, I would not want to be a doctor. I feel bad for my doctor, because I can see that he's trying to judge people. And I've seen a doctor chase a patient out of his office. It was my psychiatrist. I went in there, and the guy come out of his office pissed off. I mean, really pissed off. And he waved me in, and I walked in. I said, "A friend of yours?" He goes, "He wants OxyContin," and I wouldn't give it to him. And I go, "Really?" Because I was trying to get him to take medication off of me, because I was on a lot of stuff, lithium and Depakote, because I really wanted to kill people when this first happened, because I wanted revenge. And I'm like, "Oh, so all I have to do is ask for it, and you'll take it away." I said, "I want everything." He goes, "It ain't gonna work." So having a doctor that knows you, and you get a real personal relationship, but he'd known me for 6 months or so. You and Ernie met the guy. He spent the time, so he got to know me and my sense of humor, and even you guys can see my sense of humor. You got to get to know the patient before you start giving them medication, but some people really do need it, like me. I don't need a lot, but I need some.
I think that there has been a lot of legal repercussions, on the opioid use, and I think that, there's a lot of practice guideline changes with controlled substances that have, been initiated, and I think that's great. But I think, as Ernie was saying, that if we have these opioid dependence and overdoses, that it was the medical system, that failed them. Of course, there's going to be some bad apples in the group, but I think that we need to look at it as a medical problem, not a legal issue. So.
Good, so we were looking at the time, and we're going to wrap this up, but we don't want to stop this discussion. And you're fortunate, because you've got classmate and 2 members in the community that are willing to do more of this discussion, and we also have others, very similar stories. So we're going to continue this. If you want to get involved, please contact us. But please thank each and every one of them, and you can come up afterwards for sharing their stories and taking the time. Thank you.